Hello, true crime, sports, and gambling fans. Thanks for joining us for episode 5 of Gambling State University and the over-undertaker himself, Shinehead. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Skeeney. With operations as large as they were at this point in the story, it was becoming almost impossible for Shinehead to stay out of the spotlight. With mounting problems like what to do with the wall-to-ceiling amount of cash that was constantly being dropped off at Shinehead's room at the fraternity house, Shinehead knew that something had to be done, so he took his empire out of the fraternity house and into the basement of an apartment next to campus. Dark, no windows, seemed like the perfect place to keep a low profile. So low, in fact, that Shinehead's new partner decided to lead them into the next phase of their operation, an all-out Vegas-style casino they simply called the House, because, as you guessed it, the house always wins. Shinehead went to school on a math scholarship. He graduated with a master's degree in casino management. And if this isn't enough to excite you all, today's story also includes the incredible tale of the professor, a lifelong friend of Shinehead's and mine, whose attempt to become a bookie on his own university's campus went horribly wrong. We take a look into the darker side of the booking business, as well as the main reason how Shinehead was able to take over the gambling on so many other universities. This is all today for Gambling State University, Episode 5. Unlike the professor, the house always wins. Okay, first up on the program today, joining us is Brother Duck, Shinehead's former partner and the next venture of their gambling empire. Can you tell us, Brother Duck, how you got involved with this aspect of the house?
Shinehead got me involved originally just in the booking business, but we kind of known each other, and I had a little extra money in my pocket, obviously, and been known to gamble a time or two. And there's a story about this guy running this blackjack table out of his apartment. Out in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, well, man, I got some money to spend. Let's go check it out, see what it's like. This guy was running like one table. And, back in the day, people were running gambling houses out of fraternity houses all the time with cheap clay chips, and just one guy was the bank and all of that. But this guy had like built his own table, just like I was in the casino. He had clay chips with his initials on it. And I was like, man, this guy's kind of got it going on. Like, dude, this is like an awesome situation and a great way to deal with cash money instead of always putting people in the books. Because the worst thing about booking, the guy gets out of hand. He's got too much money. He can't pay his money. And what's he going to do? He can't gamble anymore. Great thing about the gambling house was that you're running a blackjack table. I mean, it's all cash. And it kind of worked out awesome in the end, to be honest, because it probably increased our business from the booking business because they were trying to make up the money. Basically, I took Shinehead over to the house. I told him, I was like, man, you got to check this out. So we went over there, checked it out. One guy running the table, and Shine and I left and said, I think this is. I told him, I was like, man, I think this is a huge moneymaker. So we ended up talking to the guy, told him what we were interested in doing, asked him if he wanted to be a side partner with us on a different level. And that's kind of the way the infancy of it grew. And I think it was the best thing we ever did. I think we made more money on the gambling house sometimes than we were even doing booking. It was pretty amazing.
Sounds like you were pretty instrumental in setting up this next phase, which was indeed the gambling house, instead of just running numbers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was my thing, really. I was kind of a casino guy. And, the biggest thing for me was that I kind of felt like this was the perfect opportunity to see cash money all the time.
Right.
Instead of working on credit all the time and giving people trying to collect, it was just so terrible. And what worked out great, we ended up finding this spot, a little bottom floor apartment in a sixplex, and it was right off campus, less than a block off campus, but the entrance to it was in the back. The gambling house part, who was the dealer, he kind of showed us a little bit on how to deal. He built 2 tables, just like a little studio apartment. And all it had was a bathroom and a closet, and the closet was the counting room. And we would get free beer for everybody, and every week we would buy a case of beer for everybody in the apartment complex. So there were no issues with, we kind of went around to the apartments, told them what we were doing. We were up front, and they were more than happy to get a free case of beer every week in order for us to have a little operation down low. And everybody could come in the back. There was no traffic on the front. You couldn't see anybody coming in. And it was pretty awesome. Best thing I ever did, that's for sure.
I love the fact that you were able to grease the palms of everybody in the complex because you guys just had that kind of money. That's a genius idea. Yeah.
Right, because there's really, you got a lot of people coming in there. And what I remember is we did it like 3 nights a week, I think. And as it grew, our clientele got bigger and bigger. We had those 3 tables, and this was like, pretty serious. They dressed up and we had, they were like real dealers, and real tables and real chips and accounting room back there. And again, I wasn't a dealer. I just, was kind of more of the pit boss, right? I kind of would show up a little bit at the beginning or at the end, make sure we had the bank. But really, Brother Duck was the one that kind of ran that show, and he grew that part of it. And I would say probably I think he mentioned that the collection part of the booking had got to him, and this was a good way to stay in, but not have to deal with that part of booking, because he can probably tell you I was a little bit harsher on the collection side than what my partners would have wanted to be involved in.
I would not have even thought about the fact that when you switch to playing, blackjack, you're now not having to collect because you either are putting your money down on your bet or you're not playing, period. So this must have been just the best move for you guys at this point.
It just added to, because you got to go, you go and buy chips, right? So you buy chips, you got to have cash. When you cash out at the end of the night or when you leave, we pay out. Everything is done right then. There's nobody's got credit. You come in, you play, and Brother Duck can probably attest that how that operation went, like the statistics and everything behind there. From what I recall, I don't remember us having very many losing nights.
I remember the first one that we had, and I remember we got the bank together. I'll never forget this. Sean and I are sitting there, and things weren't going so well. And I'll tell you one thing: the good thing about the operation is not only were we bringing in our own people that were betting with us from the booking operation, but we had the bookies, the fraternity bookies in town were coming to play because they had plenty of money. So they didn't care. They were losing money with us. They had plenty of green. So they were using everybody else's money and playing with house money. And they didn't care if they were winning or losing. They just had another operation. And back then, that's before we had casinos. There were not a lot of casinos in the South. It was the infancy of that. So you really didn't have a place, if you were a college student, to go to the casino and gamble. So you were used to like playing at these little crap tables, with the clay chip. It was just amateur night. And when they were coming to our place, it was like, hey, these guys got it going on. They're going to come back. It worked out. Those were some fun times. And for me, man, when I got into the booking operation, I was just looking for a place to get a little extra money so I could go see the dead. I was all about going to shows, and that was kind of my thing. And when it got to where it was a little more aggressive, I was like, man, this is not really... I wanted to do it. I was into sports, but when I kind of found that opportunity, it worked out great. And I was happy for Shinehead to kind of give me that opportunity too, because that was, you can't be taking your girlfriend to Disney World for free and doing all kinds of stuff like that. It was amazing. It really was.
So I don't know what you do at this point in life, but I have to wonder, Brother Duck, if you've got, casino manager on your resume at this point. Sounds like you had some incredible experience.
It comes up every once in a while. My boss actually knows that I did it, and he thinks I'm like, well, man, maybe that's why your negotiating skills are so good, because you did such a good job when you were in college. So I was like, probably so.
That's great. Well, at this point, it sounds like you guys have a sports book going. You've now got blackjack. Any other games? Any other casino games? War, shell game, nothing?
No, we just played. It was this... we tried to just make it simple, right? It was, hey, let's get the tables. We got the dealers. Let's give them food. Let's give them beer. Let's make sure that everybody that's around there, we don't draw too much attention to ourselves. We found a good spot. And again, it just grew our clientele. People that necessarily didn't maybe or could gamble on sports, they could go and play blackjack. And, it was just one other way for them to get their fix for gambling.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're dealing now with people who are either bookies or runners that you guys are now on a professional level with, who all know the same rule, which is that the house always wins. These guys are still coming now to your in-house casino and still gambling, knowing that they're probably going to lose.
It was better than that. We had guys that were losing. The guys that were losing that we already knew owed us a bunch of money, had to catch up when you pay out on Tuesday and you pick up on Thursday. So these guys knew that they were going to have to pay out. They were going to have to pay the house. So they were immediately coming in and using their cash money that they didn't have, that they were down with, to gamble at the gambling house, just hoping they could get the money back so they could pay the bill to us. So, I mean, it was pretty, that was the great part about it, was that right there. They were trying to make it up because they knew how much money they owed us. So they were just trying to make more money. Hopefully we can win at blackjack with the cash that we have left over in order to hit it the following week. It was beautiful.
Right.
And then if they were winning, they had cash and they were likely going to lose at blackjack. So, I mean, what they won from us, they were back losing it at the blackjack tables.
You had them coming and going, it sounds like.
Right. We caught them both ways.
Yeah.
And along the way, they got to eat and drink, and we would gladly, like any casino, you give them alcohol because they stay longer and get dumber as the night goes on and the more they drink.
Were you guys ever pumping oxygen into
No,
not that far.
We did have a window, I think, but we had. I don't think we had a clock in there, so that at least could see what time it was. Because I think at some point we did not run 24/7. I mean, we did close up shop.
Yeah,
but it was usually a pretty full house until the night was over. Man, I remember we pretty much stayed till it was like 2-ish. But again, we made sure that we took care of the people that were living in that crappy apartment there. We didn't want them to, alarm anything. So we weren't going to get too crazy and, make a huge scene. And then it just kind of grew, right?
But the decision, because I know we haven't mentioned it yet, Brother Duck, this was the move into this smaller place was because you guys didn't want to get exposed. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, no doubt about it. And this place was the perfect operation for that, because you could run everything out of that one spot. It was pretty hidden too. So like I said, it's hard to find a place that's a half a block from campus, but seemed like it was miles from any kind of heat. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's just fascinating to me to think that at this point, when you guys had to kind of take everything underground and keep it quieter, that you figured out a way to actually grow your business, which to start this blackjack, casino in the house. I'm also assuming that Wednesday nights were probably your biggest nights because Thursday was collection, correct?
Thursdays, they get paid.
They get paid. Okay.
So Tuesday, Wednesday, they have to pay.
Tuesday, Wednesday are the big
nights.
We get paid. Got it. Okay.
So if they were gambling on Tuesday, it's because they knew that they'd have to pay us on Wednesday. So this was their chance to try to make it up.
One thing I wanted to say that Shinehead mentioned earlier, it's really a big deal, is that he said he couldn't remember us losing very much. And I do remember that first night, and it had been a little bit, we thought that there was no way we were ever going to lose. Shinehead had come by to check things out. We had our bank set every night. We never really got into the bank ever. And we were just getting hammered by these two bookies from a couple different fraternity houses. And they just kept going and kept going and kept going. So Shinehead had to go into the kitty and go get some more money.
Wow.
And then he brings some more money back. And then these guys are hammering it again. And then he has to go back again. I think Shinehead went about 3 times back to get money.
Wow.
And I remember him looking at me saying, like, what the hell is going on here? And I'm like, dude, it's the first time in like 3 months we've ever lost. I mean, what does it matter? What does it matter? I mean, we're printing money over here in this place, right?
Were they good blackjack players? What was were they cheating? What was their story? Why were they the only 2 people who were winning?
I think, sometimes people they get on a roll and get hot, right? But, now that Brother Duck is mentioning that, I do remember that, going back a few times, and then I started getting a little irritated because I wasn't real happy when we were having to go to the bank for anything and pay. So right. That's when I would start getting a little bit more upset and aggressive and start thinking about other ways that we need to make sure that we have plenty of money in the bank. So the heat just irritated me enough to turn the heat up on other things. I would say on a night with the amount of people that were coming in there, I would say we had at least 10 to 20,000 a night that was like shuffling around. I mean, we had a lot of players, and they would come in with couple $100. I mean, we could easily have a $10,000 night of money moving around. I mean, we had to have a pretty good size. I mean, I think our kitty was like $5,000 or something. I mean, we started with a pretty healthy amount of money. And again, the last thing you want to do is not have enough, right? If any of them feel like they can't get paid out, or that you're, if they start winning, that you're only there to be there when they're losing and collecting, then it ruins any trust that you might have with your bookie, right? So there was a lot of action in there for a small place that happened 3 nights a week. So it easily $25,000, $30,000 a week going through there.
Wow.
And we had very, very few losing nights. We just ran 3 tables. And I remember, we ran 3 tables, and the one thing that would generally always work out is 2 out of the 3 would always win. That was kind of how it would work out. 2 out of 3 tables would win for us. 1 table may be a loser, but 2 out of 3 would. If we did that every night, again, we just had good chance. It's where the math and everything came in. Good chance we're going to win. We paid our dealers good. We paid our girls good. We provided a good service, and it was pretty much fun. It was a fun little operation to have this thing right across the street from campus. But at the end, that's when we kind of started, we're like, we can kind of make this thing a little bit bigger, right? So then that's when the girls and other parts started coming in there.
Yeah, the cigar girls, the cigarette girls.
Yeah, we didn't come around there like bottle service or anything.
We don't know where these Russian hookers are coming from, but they keep showing up.
Right, we weren't having bottle service or none of that, but...
And I just want to say, da.
Yeah. They always seem to be around, I know. Brother Duck knows, he's aware. We made it a pretty fun experience. And it was just another one of those things. They were losing money, but it was entertainment. Right.
I mean, they took it as entertainment, and our repeat business was pretty good. I mean, we were highly recommended, and we had a lot of repeat business, a lot of repeat customers.
There's no Yelp back there, but I'm guessing you guys got 4 stars.
Yeah.
Somebody,
probably, yeah.
right?
Well, you never know. We could have got a lot of some negative ones just to try to, that they were ticked off that they were losing. But our hospitality, I'm not sure how our food service was, but our hospitality was pretty good. I mean, they were playing somewhere else, and then it was really just by word of mouth, I think. I think we had a pretty good idea, though. When people walked in there, we kind of knew they were legit and who they were.
All of them were coming from the same business model. So, they were either coming from the SAE bookies crew, or they were coming from our runners crew, or they were coming from ours. I mean, for the most part, almost every single one of those guys were were already dabbling in the business on the booking side. So it was just automatic customers. It wasn't like you had to advertise that. And it's a bunch of degenerate gamblers anyway. So it didn't take long for them to find the next spot, you know.
They could sniff it out.
That, for sure.
It wasn't speakeasy. Right. Okay.
But it was,
right, but it was pretty good though around back. It was a good spot. But that's where we got engaged with the actual athletes, the players.
Gotcha.
And so they started playing there because they obviously were not supposed to be gambling on the sport that they were playing, but they could certainly go and play blackjack without raising too many flags. So the guys that you were watching go into the game and are on TV, they're sitting down at our blackjack tables, you know? I mean, if there was anybody that could bring them down, right? I mean, we could probably bring them down just as easy as they could bring us down, right?
Yeah, so it's mutual.
I didn't think I'd be dealing to a Major League Baseball player all-star one day. I mean, I'm sitting there dealing cards with a guy that's, you know, banking money in the major leagues. I was like, hey, I have no idea that it was going to turn out like that.
Right.
Shinehead had told me that you guys had Larry Holmes as a greeter once. I don't know if that's true or not, but you know, I know you have to have somebody at the front door.
Terrible. He kept forgetting everything, and I was like, Larry, you got to go. You know, this is not going to work. I mean,
you got to just slap him sometimes.
You're the pride of Eastern Pennsylvania and all, but come on.
Exactly. Are there any other stories you can think of, Brother Duck, that you would like to share while we're here? Anything we haven't mentioned?
The only one I could think of is I think that got you a little uncomfortable was with, you know, when Speedy just got a little down so much and I wouldn't back off, and I sent you to him and you were finally like, man, I think we need to stop.
Speedy, just for the record, is one of the people who was gambling with you and did not really know what he was doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we knew it for a long time, and I knew from the jump that he was a degenerative gambler, right? I mean,
Gotcha.
He was really in bad shape, and it was pretty tough for me. And I'll never forget. I mean, I kept trying to tell the guy to stop. You know, we got to quit doing this. And I mean, it's a tough story for me to tell, just because for me It's a lot different. But you know, I do remember going over to his apartment. We hadn't seen him for a while. I get there, there's like, you know, 2 weeks of mail in his front door. You know, I knock on the door, no one comes. I come back the next day, still nothing's moved, no one's coming. I'm a bit nervous, and I told Shine, I was like, dude, we got a problem here. I mean, I don't know what's going on. And I knock on the door, and the third day comes, and this pretty good looking girl opens the door. It ends up being his sister, who had driven up from, you know, to go, you know, see him and check on him. And, you know, I was like, well, unfortunately, you know, with all the money you make and all the awesome stuff, that's kind of the dark side a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the downside for me. You kind of take the good things with the bad things. That's for sure. You asked for a funny story, but I mean, that's a real life story. You know what I mean? So we did see a little bit of that, but for the most part, I got to tell you, for every Speedy, there was 150, 200 guys that were happy as hell to take that chance to win a bunch of money in college, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, that's for sure. But that was a tough moment, without question. I can tell you a good story, though. Something that I always remember that was like my favorite thing. You get a bunch of college students, when you start out, you don't have a pot to piss in, right? So I'm trying to help, you know, I'm getting some help from my parents, right, a little bit for getting through school. And I'm sitting here booking and running this gambling house, and it's Christmas after we'd been through it a whole year, and I am rolling in the money, right? I mean, I got more money than I know what to do with. And my dad's still like writing a little bit of a check to me and like giving me an allowance and shit. So I'm like, you know, this is pretty rough here. I mean, I am making 10, 15 times what he's giving me, and I can't tell him. So Christmas comes around, and I'm there for the holidays, and I finally sit my dad down, and I'm like, look, man, I got to level with you about something. I said, this is what I've been doing, and I've been doing it for over a year. Things are good. I know there's a risk involved, but I'm not telling you this because, you know, for your approval necessarily. I'm telling you this is going to feel guilty, and here's $5,000. And I said, you don't have to pay my tuition next quarter, okay? I just want you to know I appreciate all you've done, but I don't need this anymore. And I've been carrying this guilt for 6 months. I got to let you know. All right. I think he had this look of shock on his face for about 2 minutes. And then he gladly took the $5,000 and said, that's a good business decision. So, you know, now so that's going from now look, my mom and dad gamble so much that they probably were like, well, finally somebody's winning in the house. So,
right.
We got a winner. We got a winner. That's awesome.
And that's what I remember. I mean, when we talk about like people gambling and things and how it's just so accepted in that part in the South or anything. I mean, it was so accepted, and it was accepted that it was going on at school as well. We were just there to provide that service that if we didn't, somebody else was. We just kind of took it to a different level.
When the opportunity wasn't as much there, like I gambled all the time, right? Now that I can go down to where I live, I've got a sportsbook right down the street. Now that I can book at the sportsbook down the street, I hardly ever do it. I mean, I think it's something I don't even do anymore. I mean, I think when it was kind of underground and everybody knew everybody and it was the thrill of doing it through your bookie, I just think it was a lot more fun. I just remember the days of, you know, somebody had to man the phones and you had the number and all of that stuff. I mean, those were fun. I think some of it's kind of taken the fun out of it, not from a winning standpoint, but I mean, it's just so accessible now that back when we did it, it was kind of the thrill, you know what I mean? And in college, it was something that kids were doing just like they were drinking. It was just another vice, right?
I was about to say this sounds very similar to what marijuana has become now, where you used to have a bookie, you had to call somebody, you had a PIN number, you had to dial, and then someone would show up and take your order. And now that it's everywhere, it seems to be the exact same way, that it's, you know, kind of lost its luster because it's no longer underground, and, you know, you're not a scofflaw anymore if you're doing it. So there's that thrill that's now gone, it seems.
Like tattoos, baby.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a tattoo now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the cool thing, is to not have a tattoo. That's what I went. Yeah,
exactly.
That's where I went.
Exactly.
We never did talk about where the dinner was.
Yeah.
The goldfish, correct?
I think that's what we were calling it. We were calling it, like, I couldn't remember the name of it, but I just, you know, we had our own room and we had a weekly meeting there, and that's kind of where we split the money up. And, you know, we had our the guy that owned it just kind of, after being there, recognized that we were, like, you know, always there every week. We had to have something going on for whatever reason at the nicest restaurant. So
yeah, I remember the best day of the week was not coming in and dealing. It wasn't hanging out with Shine. It wasn't answering the phone and booking. The best day of the week was the surf and turf once a week on collection day for us. You know, we do all of our collections, but then once everything was done, once the week of the booking was over, once the week of the gambling house was over, I think it was Thursdays or Fridays, I can't remember, but I just remember the best time the three of us would come sit down from the gambling house money. We'd order whatever we wanted, like whatever we wanted, had our own little room, and it was surf and turf Friday, and it was man, that to me as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old college student, you know, having that once a week was pretty awesome. I'll never forget that, and I'll tell you, I still have memories of things about. I've had some great times in my life, but man, when you live in college as a bookie and running a gambling house, and that money comes out, and we start splitting that money out on Fridays, dude, it was electric. It was amazing. So
look, I was a 19 or 20-year-old waiter, and if a bunch of college kids came in every Friday and ordered surf and turf, I would definitely know something is suspect. There's something going on here.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
we
sure you
were
were
pretty loose with the tips, the money.
Of course.
You know, I mean, we spread the wealth around.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
we didn't just, you know, we weren't that selfish.
Yeah.
And we did have like a pile of cash. I mean, it's kind of dumb, I guess, but we did have like a pile of cash, and that's where we just. I mean, I distributed the winnings. Yeah. I'm like, here it is for the week, man. This is what we got. You know, it's been a pretty good week. We got a few people here that's on our list we got to collect from, but. It's pretty good so far. Let's keep it up.
Just to finish that up, if I were the owner of that restaurant, or if I was the waiter benefiting from you guys spending your illegal money with me, I wouldn't care. What would I care? I would be your best friend. I would look forward to having you guys in and probably be fighting with the other people in the restaurant to make sure that I'm getting the tip that night from your party. So you weren't stingy, and you were very good about spreading that around, which I think is why you had, whether people knew it or not, you had people helping you out, like the owner of the restaurant or the people who, were waiting on you, for example. That's a great example of what you guys were, capable of doing with that much money at that point in your lives. So
Absolutely.
we're going to switch gears now and talk about when things go bad in the bookie business. What makes Shinehead's success story so unique and worthy of discussion is simply that because most people who try to accomplish the same level of success as Shinehead wind up losing quickly to the law of averages. Shinehead didn't necessarily win 100% of the bets he was taking in, but in Shinehead's case, because he quickly was successful, his profits could cover any potential losses, and he could continue to collect and eventually make up for any week that was less profitable. If you're starting out as a bookie and you don't have the cash to cover those losses, things go south very quickly. You can find yourself owing, 5 figures or more. Though his nickname is the Professor, he was a student. He is a friend and a peer of Shinehead's, and he's here to discuss his story with us today.
I knew the Professor pretty much growing up most of our lives. He was my brother's age, played sports, along with my brother and me. So we knew each other, our families very intimately. And the Professor just went to, a different university than I did, but again, had a strong liking for sports, which usually turns into gambling. And, he knew that I was booking there and heard that it had kind of was pretty successful and doing pretty well. And his idea was, I think I'm just going to start doing it myself.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I know we just went into a little bit of your background, but you can explain it maybe in your words and tell us, how you got involved. That'd be great.
Well, I was in a fraternity at my university, and I had talked to Shinehead, and it sort of piqued my interest, and I was like, and I bet my fraternity had a house bookie, so to speak. They just called it the house. So I placed several bets on my own before I got into booking, and then just got to the point where I was like, I realized the house always wins. And I remember talking to Shinehead, and again, it just came to me, and I was like, screw this. I'm just going to do my own board, so to speak. I called it the big board. And a lot of my fraternity brothers would place bets with me because the house, those guys kind of graduated and faded away. So I sort of kind of took over for them. And, I had, $3,000, something like that, saved up, and decided I'd start booking. So I let everybody know. And before I knew it, I had people betting and, more than I thought. And long story short, I got destroyed the first week. Destroyed. Like, I can't even explain how destroyed I was. But I was pretty much thinking about the alternatives to getting out of town, changing my identity, or offing myself. And then when I called Shinehead up, I said, look, I'm in big trouble. First week I was booking and I got destroyed. I don't know what the frig to do. What do I do? And I never forget it. He was like, okay, I'll call you right back. So I waited there in probably, 10, 15 minutes of agony and misery and angst. And then he called me back and he said, here's what we're going to do. I'll help you here. I'll pay out the losses. And then going forward, basically, if you lose, I pay. If you win, you keep half. You send me half, and you got to check in. And it was like Godsmack. I was like, okay. that sounds good. And then, of course, I started winning as soon as that happened. But that's how it was. But I had, it started getting more and more people, and I had some football players on the football team betting with me. I had people that wouldn't pay. I had to get, maybe some big guys to go scare some people. But basically, that's how I started. And I was a runner because I was basically looking through Shinehead and then telling him what I had on everything, and that's pretty much it. But it was fun for a while, my part at least.
Well, you kind of got, you were in a no-lose situation, right? If
it was a win-win,
if you lost
going forward,
if you lost, I would cover it.
Right.
And if you won, I trusted you enough to call in all the bets. And then if you won, your job is to collect from there. Half goes back to Shinehead. You keep half. And if you have problems and you can't solve them, then you get me involved.
Yep, exactly. So the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders, and sure enough, we started doing all right.
Would that be your services, Shinehead? Would you then have to charge someone like the professor for that, or was that just come out of the debts? How's that work?
Honestly, it's hard to remember exactly there, but it's one of those problems that you don't want, right? I mean, the last thing I wanted was somebody that was owing money that was not even in my town and was a long way away. That's a difficult, no one likes to want to get in the car and, as G Money said, start dropping cinder blocks, to get people's attention. Unfortunately, there's always a couple that just get out of control and they get behind.
This sounds to me like you guys both had essentially the same start. You were in a house, you both like sports, you guys were the runners for your freshman year for the house bookie. That's pretty much where your stories went the complete opposite direction. But it's so interesting because you, Shinehead, could have turned into the exact same thing that happened to the professor very quickly in your first week. When you're playing this law of averages and you're in it for the long game and you've got the money to hold yourself out, then those ups and downs, those losses aren't as much as it is when you're first starting out, which is what sounds like it happened to you, Professor.
Had I won that first week, I probably never would have called Shinehead, but I called him out of desperation because I wasn't blaming him for getting me in that situation, because he did sort of tell me about it. I wasn't blaming him at all, but I was shocked when he came back with the here's what I'm going to do, this win-win situation, and I was forever grateful, and I still am, even looking back to this day, because it was a world of difference. And I didn't realize really how big Shinehead was until after the fact. I was like, holy shit, thank goodness he's my friend.
Right.
Now, and again, I think that's part of it, is even my runners, really, the professor was the first. And so, but it grew to other campuses and things. The only person that knew that I had all these other operations everywhere else was me. My partners at my school were just for my school, not for everybody else. So all the runners, at different areas came back to me. They might have known each other, but none of them knew that they were all of them doing the same thing.
Knowing you both for as long as I have, I will have to say that I did not know this part of the story. I knew some of this, but I'm learning this right now, and I'm very impressed that you had a friend who was, I don't mean to use the word desperate or dramatic, but was at a place where his life could have changed very quickly for the worst. And instead of going the other direction, which you've been known to do, you went this other direction and helped him, and essentially saving your friend's life, which I think is pretty freaking amazing.
I will say this too. Shinehead's younger cousin was my roommate. so that helps. That helped. And he was kind of helping me, Shinehead's cousin, a little bit too. And then the excitement really grew. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But again, the professor, he definitely knew me growing up and knew, my family and friends. And he'd probably be one of the few that would, again, say, I never would have expected what he got into coming from where he, started in middle school and high school, because that was not his character then. It completely changed when he left high school and he was a different person.
But that side, though, of you that you're talking about as Shinehead, still, at this point, it shows me that you still have your humanity, that you still care about your friends, that you're not just in this. Yeah, you're in this for the money, but at the end of the day, you had a decision and you went to save your friend.
Listen, as sure as the day is long, he saved me. There's no other term to use. He saved me. I referred to him as the savior for a long, long time. The savior. I don't know how this happened, but he did. But he's a good guy. I can say this. He's a good guy. He's from a good family, and I loved all those guys like my brothers. I've known them knew them for years. So
initially, I kind of talked him into doing this, that it was a pretty no-lose situation. And to get beat bad on the first weekend, I felt, some responsibility, right? So I was in a position to be able to help because I know that can happen, right? But I also saw that as, maybe there's a way that we both can, win in this situation. And that was really key. Everywhere that I had runners at other schools, I had to be able to trust them that they were handing off stuff to me that was really what was happening in reality. And I could do that with him. Plus, I knew where he lived and everything else. So if I really did have to track him down, it wouldn't be very hard.
You just call your cousin.
And I was so grateful that there was no way in the world I was going to stray to the dark side and try to withhold any information. I was like, here it is. These are all the bets and lines I got. And, this is it. Nothing up my sleeve.
It's very smart, by the way, to do that.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I don't know if after that, I'm not sure I gave anybody 50-50. Initially, I thought that was kind of a win for both. But after that, there were no more 50-50s. I think it was more like a third, 2/3 kind of thing, because I figured out, all right, I'm the one that's got the bigger risk, because if it doesn't hit, I'm the one that's got to pay out.
Listen, I did it for a time myself. I've since been reformed and I was, a lot of times I would do it out of boredom and I'm like, what's wrong with me? So I refrain. I might place a bet on a big game like Super Bowl or with some, but I don't do anymore through online. I don't do any more online booking, gambling. I just don't. I might, if I gamble, I go to the casino, which is even more rare these days. I think it's fun when I was in college, because when you won, the guy came around and gave you an envelope with your winnings. And when you lost, you knew that knock on the door was coming. But I never got over my head personally with as a gambler on the other side. It was just that when I decided to do it, just my luck, that first week I got destroyed. Like when I say destroyed, I mean, there's no way that could happen, but it did. So I think legalized gambling now has made it less fun and less exciting, because you can just get online and do it. But back then it was just like the excitement of it. And, with my buddies, we'd bet on the same game and we were watching intently, and it was just ups and downs of emotions.
And it was fun, having you have your number, you call into somebody. Like you said, if you're winning, you get an envelope that's got cash in it. If you lose, you got to go figure out what you're going to do on Tuesday and Wednesday. And now that it's just online, it's just so easy. There's not much emotion attached to it. You're not calling anyone. It's it's a total different.
I remember I'd give a 10-game parlay, and people would call up with 10 bets, and I wouldn't even write them down. Like, there's no fucking way you're winning. There's no fucking.
Right. I think I taught you that. Yeah. Get parlays and teasers.
So hard. I was like, oh, people take it. Like, okay, great.
Considering the vastness of Shinehead's gambling empire, which was still growing larger and larger by the day, it was really only a matter of time before the nonstop party had to come to an end. Now, sure, there are many factors that could have easily taken down this entire business and everyone involved, and they range from, simple things like being busted by the cops or the university, or it could also be something far worse. Please join us for our next episode of GSU when we discuss the nails on the chalkboard moment that brought it all to an end. We found out how and why Shinehead's empire crumbled overnight. See you next Wednesday for the next episode of Gambling State University. I'm Kevin Skeeney, and if you have to gamble, I'm encouraging you to gamble on yourself.